here, and as people join, they can, join on board. They can just get on board. So welcome everyone to joining us for Tuesday Talks with FEO. My name is Debbie Mann. I am with FEO, and today we have Mary Beth Kyer from Sponsor Circle and Brian Wylie from Connected Interactive. Mary Beth, why don't we start with you and just introduce yourself and what you do and why are you here? No.
What are you doing?
What are you doing?
Hi, everyone. Mary Beth, and very excited to be here today. I'm also a proud newbie to the board for Festivals and Events Ontario. Very excited to start that role. A little bit about me and my background. I come to the sponsorship industry through technology and accounting, actually. I've spent the last 15 years or so working in tech, helping large companies and small companies to build out the way they communicate using technology. I've built entire virtual events, large online learning experiences, and my customers over the years have been Loblaws and Arterra, and small nonprofits as well. And it just is incredible just how much technology just evolves and changes so quickly, but then also how we can connect together in ways that we've never been able to do in prior years. I did my undergrad and then subsequent designation in accounting, and it gives me a great, tool to evaluate, especially when it comes to sponsorships, the measurements, the kinds of things that brands are often looking for is, helping to determine how best to articulate what sponsorships bring to the table for a brand. So that, in a nutshell, is what I do at Sponsor Circle.
Thank you. And Brian, over to you.
Thanks. Can we all just get onto Michael's boat there? That looks pretty inviting. Yeah, it's space. So I've been in the advertising space since I graduated, sort of mid 90s-ish. And with a focus on paid media. I've worked in a variety of ad agencies over the years, working on a ton of different pieces of the business, involved in media planning, strategic execution, client management, all of those kinds of great things. And about 10 years ago, was part of a group that started up Connected Interactive. And we did that in order to get on board with the MarTech wave that was happening and getting involved in the changes in how digital advertising was being bought and sold. And have evolved the company over the last few years to really focus on something called programmatic marketing, programmatic advertising. And if anybody's not very familiar with that, I'm happy to have a chat with anybody afterwards. And really the impact of data on that and analytics and how that can impact and improve the performance of any digital ad campaign. We brought in some unique data partners into the Canadian markets and have stayed on top of everything that revolve around data, including and especially more impactful today are things like privacy and consumer choice when it comes to anything from a mobile or from a desktop ad campaign. So it's been quite a ride, especially over the last 6-7 months from a COVID perspective, and that has also created all kinds of new challenges, changes, adjustments, philosophies, and the way that a lot of our clients are working. And I think we'll dig into that a little bit as we go forward today.
Wonderful. Thanks, Brian. All right, so we're here because we're going to talk about sponsorship and digital assets. So Mary Beth and Brian, I'll just toss it over to you. It's challenging today because A, our festivals aren't happening, but B, the ones that are doing virtual virtual festivals, are you finding that they are finding it challenging to find sponsors and how to sell sponsors in this virtual age?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, things have definitely changed over the course of the last number of months, to say in the least. we've been involved working with a number of events and festivals that had previously been on site. No ticketing or anything like that. You know, a good example is Semaine Italienne that just recently did in Montreal, which typically has a footprint of about 400,000 folks going through over the course of a week-long period, and suddenly, you know, nothing, no event. So what do you do? I thought maybe what I could do is share my PowerPoint so that I can just take you through some general concepts of you know, what we're you know, what we're thinking about in terms of really how to leverage, look at your current assets, and then, you know, translating them into a digital, and just confirming that they really do hit the points that a brand is looking for or a sponsor is looking for.
Wonderful.
So I'm just going to confirm. Are you able to see my slide deck?
I can see it.
Perfect. All right. So, you know, in a pre-world, COVID world, you know, so many events and festivals. This is events and festival season, and really now looking at how existing festivals and events have translated into a virtual experience, but then also for those looking at how best to translate one, if they should at all. And before we go into that, I just want to kind of just refresh folks, you know, and just, you know, start off with the context of, you know, why do brands buy sponsorship in the first place? And really what this is doing is to help us kind of frame the conversation about how that translates into a digital experience. So sponsorship, as you know, with festivals and events, we do an awesome job when it comes to brand awareness. That alignment, being able to demonstrate that the brand is living and breathing in the community. It's just, it's an obvious connection that, of course, as you know, has been happening over the course of a long period of time. Changing of brand perception is very important as well, and that also is something that brands have been leveraging events and festivals. And of course, exhibitors, the whole sampling, the consumer packaging goods industry that leans on festivals and events to do sampling. Very, very important component that, of course, in a virtual experience, you need to kind of look at that and see what you have to offer. Verifiable leads and conversions, certainly, again, for many of the sponsors, they are looking for more than just brand awareness. They're looking to actually push through to get decent leads, and then, of course, convert them into a client. Certainly industry conferences are a good example, but then also any festival and event put on, there is a desire to, you know, to convert them or at least get closer to a purchase. And then also, finally, employee engagement. You know, this is where large brands that are living and breathing and operating in various communities want to demonstrate to their employees that they have bought into the community, and that also perhaps they're looking to hire other folks and want to demonstrate that they are involved in the community, but then also to be able to provide tickets and experiences for employees. And so sponsorship kind of fits into, as you know, an overall media plan. And I thought I would ask Brian to talk a little bit about kind of what's happening as it relates to some, one of his client, Scotiabank, and how sponsorship is being used within the context of an overall plan.
Right. So Scotiabank was a former client when I was working in the agency, and they had two main focuses. One was on hockey and another was on culture and events. And the agency that I was working at was engaged with them on a media planning and buying exercise, and the client needed to integrate in their sponsorship strategies into what it is that they're doing from an overall brand campaign perspective. So you would think, that the big part of this would fit into that left-hand bucket about brand awareness, because they would go and they would spend $100 million, say, on a Rogers/NHL sponsorship. The big part of $100 million over, say, 6 years, or what did they pay for rights on for the arena? Was it $800 million over 20 years? Those are all things that that have to factor into an overall marketing play and how that impacts budgets. But really, they sit in each one of these buckets here on why they do these things. And, they need to change brand perception. That is a huge part of an overall brand awareness campaign. They're competing against the other banks. They need to be able to show people that, hey, we're probably the best Canadian bank, and we are the bank of hockey. So anybody who thinks about hockey, which is pretty much everybody in Canada, if they wanted to be stereotypical, think about us when when you're combining your banking needs and your hockey needs. Sampling being where they can actually get out credit card applications for, say, the Tangerine product when they launched a new brand underneath their credit card line within Tangerine. They're out there getting signups at the venues and events, and that leads also into verifiable leads and conversions. If anybody watched the NBA playoffs just recently, unfortunately for the Raptors, they should have gone a lot farther than that. But they were giving away $250 possibly if the Raptors won that game that night for anybody who signed up for an account. So that's how they can tie that in. They're using standard media, major broadcast channel, and tying in something as simple as getting somebody to go and sign up for a bank account. And of course, the employee client and engagement. Nothing got some of those people within within Scotiabank more excited than the fact that they had multiple boxes at the arena, and how are they going to use those entertainment product within there. Unrelated, had another client of ours that at one of the agencies that one year, put us into a hunt to go find this great sponsorship. They ended up going with MLSE, and they put up some rink boards and they got themselves a box. And it was because they decided they just want to engage with their investors and make their investors see the brand in a high profile location. And then they wanted a box where they could go and congratulate themselves all the time about all the money that they're making themselves and go have a good time at a game, which, is a frustrating reason for doing sponsorships, but it exists out there. And, so there's all kinds of different scenarios that could see, a bank like Scotiabank jumping into things, but they're always going to have something from a regional play, and that can go down to a micro community to provincial level, and then all that escalates up to what they're doing from a national brand perspective. So there's opportunities for everybody within, when they have an $800 million budget, there's something for everybody there.
Mm-hmm. And another client that you've worked with as well, Home Hardware, they of course are very much a community-based, brand that really focuses in on being entrenched in the community as well. And they have a similar framework of a media plan.
Yep, they do, and they tie that all into, they're also into hockey. We actually, I worked on Scotiabank, Home Hardware, Boston Pizza, all of them with a huge hockey focus at the time. And we actually got them to leverage some assets together and work together and doing some co-promotions and things. But Home Hardware is very community focused, taking a look at local hockey, and they would own local arenas, and they would embed themselves into those places to try and engage a local dealer with the community face. And in a lot of cases, that local dealer had a family there and they were at the arena anyway. So a good natural progression from a marketing perspective that fits so nicely within with their communication and with what the community was looking for.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, so, based on a lot of people who are online right now have smaller events, what kind of assets would you suggest that they look for when they're approaching a sponsor?
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think that's kind of, a really interesting thing to consider right now. One, everyone's looking to reach that individual community, that decision maker, and that's where everyone, as Brian has said, is choosing a topic and pushing. But what smaller festivals and events have to offer is that special connection that now with digital opportunities is possible. And so, you know, looking at whether or not a festival event, a smaller one, has a solution to solve, we look at the following that we have. We look at what's been built up in order to be able to translate that into a virtual experience.
Yeah, Scotiabank actually added on an execution over the last 5 years or so, which is, I forget the name of it, but what they did was they put out a contest where your local hockey team could actually win an opportunity to get on Hockey Night in Canada and introduce one of the games coming up. And along with that came $1,000 for every team. And I think that they sponsored 1,000 teams every year. And I think they increased that over the last couple of years. Actually, my son had the benefit of being on Hockey Night in Canada. I wasn't involved anymore. It was just a completely random situation. Our team won. And it was so exciting to see these kids to be on TV. We recorded the whole thing. And, you know, they're running that in Hockey Night in Canada, which is a major national broadcaster, but the community feel that comes in that is the parents and the fact that that whole thing gets shared socially amongst their friends and family. It really does have that sort of that community-based appeal to it, you know, to sort of bring it all together. But it didn't require anything from, you know, all these sports associations, like our son plays in the Oakville Rangers, and they didn't require assets for it. They just needed a bunch of teams to get excited about it and go out and try and win the opportunity and share that feeling that they got when they actually did win. So it was a pretty simple execution, really.
Yeah, that whole community pride, that's pretty exciting.
Yeah.
It's pretty exciting.
It's really important, really important.
Good. Are these events, so how are the events that are here that we're talking to, how can they maintain the festival, the sponsors that they have within their festivals? I mean, how can they take better advantage of digital assets and give them what they need?
Yeah, I think, thank you for the perfect segue there, Debbie. Just to kind of talk about current sponsors and then also who we're competing against, right? Things have changed, especially in light of COVID. We need to understand what's out there at certain price points so that we can keep our current sponsors happy. And the good news is there is actually some really great opportunities. And also, you know, the trend to really kind of almost make it very clear about, you know, price points. And these are things that are really great opportunities for smaller festivals and events that, you know, that have large sponsors and then small sponsors. And I'm going to just throw it briefly to Brian to talk a little bit about digital advertising and how that's happening. And then I'll talk about influencers and then sponsorship and where we have seen the growth in virtual.
Yeah, basically during COVID, consumers did a major switch to, you know, now being online. Significantly more. Traffic in the web just increased tenfold over that particular time. Certain publishers or websites or social media benefited far more significantly to that than others did. But with the consumer traction moving to being spending far more time online or on their phones, the agencies and the clients who were prepared for that space took advantage of that, because at the same time, there is also a big price reduction in terms of being able to buy those eyeballs in particular. So where there's opportunity, I think now from a digital perspective, is just the fact that when COVID came along, there's a huge spike in online traffic, and as the market started to open up, the spike is not going back down like some other things might be. You don't see that reverse curve happening. It's plateauing and it's going to stay there. And if there's further shutdowns and things like that, God forbid, then we'll probably see another slight increase in that. The great thing is that means that it's possible to find more and more potential audience and individuals to engage with for events from a digital perspective now than there would have been, you know, last year at this time.
Mm-hmm. And so moving on to influencers, you know, there's been a huge development in influencers and what they have to offer. So what I mentioned previously about sponsorship we spent a lot of time in the brand awareness, you know, into brand perception area. What influencers are doing is they are kind of handling the entire consumer journey to purchase. They're not only helping out with brand awareness, but they're also helping out with promo codes, market affiliation, affiliate marketing, all the way out to path to purchase, and they're measuring it easily for them. And so where that is, what they're also doing is really small bite-sized pieces. So rather than, you know, a large deal over the course of, you know, a year, influencers are charging on a per post basis, and then also receiving commissions on the back end. And it is these bite-sized pieces that we're starting to see where somebody is trying it on for size, you know, that we're running up against in terms of competing for sponsorship dollars, because this is all coming out of the same bucket. It's just really how can we stand up against digital advertising and influencers. Now, I'm on the sponsorship page. There is nothing like a meaningful, memorable experience with your family at a local festival that takes it home for you. And it doesn't matter whether or not it's, you know, just picking up samples from a local brewery along the festival train, or whether or not it is, you know, the midway that's sponsored by, you know, Liuna or what have you. So, you know, that's the magic that we have over any of this other thing. Influencers come in and out, they post, that's it, they're gone. You know, digital advertising, same thing. If there's kind of not a meaningful experience associated with that campaign, then, you know, it you know, it really serves a great purpose as well. Sponsorship is great. Now, what we are seeing in terms of development is, of course, moving to a virtual experience. We've all, at Sponsor Circle, we've helped a number of smaller festivals and events move on to a virtual experience. I mentioned briefly Etel Fest, or Semaine Italienne in Montreal, 400,000 folks milling about in downtown Montreal, now into a virtual experience. The interesting thing is that brands are super engaged in these kinds of experiences as well. This past weekend, there was Kona Brewing in California that has been sponsoring the Ohana Music Festival for years. Not able to go on, but what they did is they created a virtual experience of past music festivals from their archives that nobody had ever seen. Suddenly this is new and rich content that the brand, that Kona Brewing, was very happy to be alongside. Festivals and events typically have a website already and a following, a social following, and so they were able to really lean on that and build out a beautiful digital experience while the festival wasn't taking place in real life. Also, there are quite a number, and we've seen this as well, that they're taking this opportunity to build a virtual experience festival that will play alongside the physical one in the future. So for Semaine Italienne this year, they really had the chance to really focus in on a virtual, and that they plan to do that in the future. And if you think about it, they're hitting completely different target audience at the same time, and they are able to actually charge more because they have a completely different distribution and different target audience. So they've built out new digital assets that they can charge in addition to the physical festival for next year.
What would that look like, that digital asset?
What does a digital asset look like?
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
I'm sorry?
Yes. Well, a digital asset, what would it look like?
Okay. Well, as part of being in a festival, as you know, you go through and say, what do I have to offer that that I can sell, right? So that's kind of a very basic framework. And then what can I charge for that? So, you know, we've got signage, we've got, you know, different types of experience. We've got the sponsoring of different components. We've got exhibitors and all that kind of stuff. When you move into a virtual experience, there are also assets. You have segments of your website that you know, that people will hit. If you run a virtual festival, and this we highly recommend, is that you run it so that everyone hits your own website, your own festival first, that then launches the broadcast in whatever medium, whether it's Facebook, you know, live Facebook you want to do, or YouTube, or what have you, but they all experience it through your website, so that you're driving traffic to your website, and you can gain the analytics that you need in order to say, hey, wasn't that amazing? We had, you know, 20,000 people come to this event, and this is what they look like. So that you can bring that back to your brand and say, you know what, this is a brand new, you know, frontier that we're looking at, but wow, isn't this, you know, this is what we were able to deliver for you. Some of the different things that I've seen that have been really, really cool from different festivals is the Cannes Festival, the Cannes Film Festival and Cannes Festival for advertising. Obviously, it's always been in person. And one of the things that they did really well for sponsorship is that they sponsored specific programming. So when you went to their website, they had a different theme for different topics. So they kind of talked about, you know, what's new and upcoming. They talked about like a different award for specific categories, and they had a brand alongside each of those programs. And so those brands were always front and center on the website all the time, and you knew and you understood why they were there, because the topic or the program that they had chosen made sense. So for a perfect example, you know, Unity is a 3D provider, and so that's, you know, film is kind of moving into that direction. So it doesn't take a rocket scientist to realize that there's that brand alignment, and that they were really heavily sponsoring that particular brand. And, you know, even though we say, okay, well, what do we have to offer? Digital is really good. It provides for better metrics than a physical event. It complements what we're doing in a real experience. I personally feel that you can't beat a concert with your friends live, but you can supplement that experience with great data digitally as well.
Ryan, do you have anything to add to that?
Well, certainly, you know, as far as an asset goes, your website is going to be the most important part of it. You know, you got to recognize the fact that we're not going to be in this for forever. So it's a great opportunity to prepare for eventually when things come in person. And you can do that by ensuring that you have a website that's very engaging, has a lot of good content like Mary Beth is talking about, using some tactics to keep people involved beyond the time frame of, let's say, you know, when this event might have been. So Mary Beth's talking about the event at Montreal. And, you know, that they continue to do things before and after the event, keep people engaged with the concept afterwards. They're going to continue to have an engaged audience that they can market to down the road. And I think we're talking about that in a few more pages, but it's a great opportunity to build an audience and be able to use them in the future for sure.
Mm.
So if festivals do choose to go to a virtual experience, are there sponsors? Are there people looking for sponsor opportunities?
Oh yeah.
All right, Mary Beth, go.
Yeah. I mean, people need to make their budgets, right? I mean, we're hanging out in our house, but I'm sorry, like the world continues on, and you know, brands. the marketing department and the sales staff, they all need to hit markets. And we do quite a lot of work in, you know, with some professional associations. And what we're seeing there is that they've lost that tail end, that conversion, that sales to conversion. And so they're looking for new ways to kind of beef that up. And so we're seeing the sponsoring of virtual websites, webinars, so that they can get that data, right? That those potential leads that they've lost from, you know, an exhibitor experience. And I think it's important to kind of break it down into bite-sized pieces. You know, for small and medium-sized festivals, you don't have to go whole hog. And I really like multiple points, like touch points throughout the year. So you can build interim events through your website. You don't have to do like an all-in one day. You can do, you know, different experiences, or a reminder of, you know, a different section of your festival and event, or if there's a theme that runs alongside in your community, and you know, brands are looking for you know, to run alongside that. Build your social following as well. It's so much easier to be able to, you know, find your audiences when we go back physically as well, by making sure you're building your following. So always run your experiences through your social, to your website, to wherever. Don't just run it all on Facebook Live. Like, you'll lose that great data that you can serve up to your brands afterwards. And, you know, you're talking about, are there sponsors that are interested in this? Yeah, absolutely. You know, and how to maintain your current sponsors. You'll be surprised what they say when you ask them. So, for example, some of the larger kind of, you know, CSR plays, perhaps like the banks and NFIs. You know, they're in this now still for the festivals and events, not necessarily because they're going to get, you know, whatever traffic or conversion that they want, but they want to be able to say, listen, I didn't leave you when it was kind of tough, because that is nothing worse for a community. But ask them what they're looking for, and you'd be surprised what they say. And I'm sure a lot of you have already done that, given that we're, you know, we've gone through this past year. When you're looking at building out a virtual conversation, right? Let's talk about it as a conversation, a story that you're telling. Try to maximize your online engagement through your social channels. Consider contesting, again, to build out your database, but then also to just kind of see where your audience is you know, what they're resonating with, and just try to continue the engagement throughout the year. And this is even when you go back to a physical experience. I highly recommend continued engagement. You offer so much more to your brand, to your sponsor, if it is little bite-sized digital engagement or what have you throughout the year.
Yeah, I think the environment today allows you to actually take a look for potential sponsors that may not have engaged in the past. Mm-hmm. All retail has shifted objectives and strategies. The concept of curbside pickup did not exist in February of last year, and it's now commonplace. Click and collect, or brick and collect, is what a lot of the major brands are talking about. Has taken off, in e-commerce in general. That's the new channel. And it might give local opportunities, local communities, local retail an opportunity to become engaged now with events, and working in ways with a virtual sponsor to encourage people to think about local retail first versus running off to Amazon.ca as a great example of, and thinking about that, you know, that contesting part of it. You know, just an idea that we're bouncing around is, you know, just thinking about having people submit favorite recipes for cookies and working with a local bakery of some kind, and connecting that consumer back to the bakery who can get a digital coupon to go online and order a dozen cookies. Now I know what I'm going to be doing after this. I'm going to be going to get some cookies, I'm sure. But this is it's just one idea to connect with your local community that maybe hasn't been an opportunity before. And you could probably work with those local retailers in a new model too. And instead of saying, give me a bunch of money up front, why don't we drive traffic to you? And as part of that, we'll take a part of whatever kind of sales that we can drive and become a part of that performance marketing aspect that I think that anybody in retail is looking for now. Performance marketing is a really important part of being able to drive revenue, drive sales. So maybe there's a new potential sponsorship model that can emerge from this.
Yeah, and I think kind of building on that, Brian, you know, if we are talking about, you know, don't give up exclusivity for a particular, you know, category. I mean, perhaps some of these local new sponsors are interested in running for a framework, so or for a time frame. So let's say a 3-month time frame, and they're running to, you know, to launch a product or to launch an initiative or what have you, and they use the local festival and event virtually to kind of drive that additional experience, that influence that that they're looking to leverage. And believe it or not, yes, there are definitely people that are all in looking for sponsorship. And the easiest way to kind of look for new sponsors is to find out who's hiring in your area. You just go onto LinkedIn and see who's hiring. There will always be segments, and you know, that is the best way. Find out who's profitable. So announcements, you know, all the run on different products throughout the COVID timeframe. There were a good many of them that were also sponsoring as well. And then find out who's spending on social. And in particular, this is just the coolest thing that I have discovered. And it's really more about finding out what our sponsors, you know, talking about. What are they pushing? So if you go into your own social feed and you can see who's blasting at you, and it's not a coincidence that there are that many more ads. Every single brand is looking to get out there and make a connection with folks. And what is so beautiful about sponsorship is that that's a whole other runway that that we can build out, you know, virtually. So on the right hand side, you see Good Food. This is an example. And if you have not been blasted with a Good Food ad in any one of your social channels, I'm going to give you a prize, because I think it's impossible not to be tagged by them. And what Good Food is trying to do is they're in a highly competitive market. They're trying to beat out HelloFresh and everyone else. They're trying to compete against suddenly the new delivery services that all the grocery stores are providing, not to mention the skip the dishes and everything else. So this is like suddenly a highly competitive market. And so no surprise, they're spending a ton of money, but what are they spending? What are they talking about? And so if you go into any like any company, like your local developers, like your local you know, building developers, or in this case Good Food, you go in, and on the left hand side of their Facebook site, you'll come down to page transparency. And if you click on see all, you'll get some data about kind of what it is that they're doing and what have you. And then if you go into, at the very bottom, it says go to ad library. And if you click on go to ad library, you can see all of the ads that they're running right now at this very time. You can see English, French, the messaging, what they're pushing, how much they're pushing. And so if you're out looking for new sponsors, this is a really quick way to kind of see, are they even spending during this time? And, you know, if they are, then, you know, certainly a virtual, running alongside a virtual event is a good choice. Now, for anyone who doesn't see go to ad library at the bottom, you have to go into unlock or allowed add or remove ad blocker up in Google Chrome. And so you can take that off and it'll allow you to see the library. But anyways, it is so great because when you do approach a sponsor, you know what they're talking about. You know what they've already chosen to talk about. And so you can craft your conversation with the new potential sponsor with this information.
It's actually a really good idea. Dave posted a question in the chat room, then he left. But you know, the best way to make your ask stand out is making sure that you're really in tune with what the product or the sponsor or the potential prospect, what their objectives are, and what their strategies are. If your outcome can best match their KPI, then you're going to have the best chance at getting some of their money. And this is a great tool to do some research on trying to figure out what their KPIs are. You know, tie this into doing some just general research on what the brand's doing, any other marketing articles, things like that, that'll help you get a good feel for that. If they won't tell you specifically, or if they don't outline it in their RFPs or whatever that, or RFIs, then this is a good tool to say, you're trying to capture this audience with this type of messaging. That's my audience. You're going to have a better chance.
Every festival and event, especially, you know, the smaller and mid-tier should have, you know, you know, look at your local developers and find out whether they're advertising right now. It'll give you an idea as to what kind of new developments they're working on, because they need to do like a lot of hard work in order to sell, you know, new homes or condos, and they've already started it, so now they just need to actually find people. And so if you fall upon a developer, you know, if you go onto the webs on Facebook and see that the developer isn't doing any Facebook ads, then you probably you know, you can certainly call them, but I would put them in the less than warm category.
Okay. So is there anything else? Because I'd like to open this up to the participants to see if they have any questions.
Yeah, absolutely. There's just one small aspect, and certainly this is like a really key component when you are going to virtual. A lot of the festivals and events, since there's no ticket that you're purchased, you may not actually have a lot of data on who your attendees have been in the past. But the good news is that you can you know, leverage the content, leverage the followers that you do have, and then you're able to build like audiences. So you can go out and say, all right, so the majority of my people came from this postal code, or, you know, these are the types of followers. Now, create a profile of like audiences so that when I do a virtual experience, I can get audiences to attend. Another thing to consider is leverage influencers in the community to promote a virtual experience. Italfest, they leverage 5 really strong Italian influencers in the Montreal community in order to push the message out. And it made a huge difference to be able to kind of just explore new avenues. They'd never used influencers before, and it was a really powerful way to promote. And I mean, ultimately, that's what your goal is as well. You build your following, you become an influence in your community as well. And I think that's about it in terms of what we wanted to talk about. You know, showcasing your post-event. You know, making sure that you are providing the analytics. And again, if you're driving it all through your website, you're going to be able to get some good analytics there. And then finally, just really knowing your assets and how you can build alongside these examples of what a typical festival event does in order to build out these kinds of items virtually. And that's about it. Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much. Why don't we open it up? Does anybody out there have any questions, comments, ideas that can help open this up to the industry? You can just put your hand up or type in the comments. Are you sure? Okay, would Mary be able to walk through how Sponsor Circle works?
Yeah, sure. So the Sponsor Circle was born from watching a lot of my friends and family in the sponsorship industry trying to fundraise for events. And me over in the tech world, kind of, working along different types of products and companies, I was like, my gosh, like sponsorship is just so difficult. The time it takes to do the lead generation and find the right potential sponsor, it was just so much legwork. And every single festival and event in North America, we're talking about, millions of festivals and events, are all doing the same thing. Surely there has to be a better way to make this work, and in terms of the lead generation. And that's kind of how Sponsor Circle was born, was really to help festivals and events, cause-based initiatives to be able to leverage a centralized repository of resources that will help to get you to a hotter sponsorship prospect. Brands do a really good job of declaring what they're interested in. They'll say, I'm interested in sports, I'm interested in youth, I'm interested in environment. And they make it really clear, but you as, as a sponsorship specialist going out to try to find who they are, there's no easy way to do other than spending time on the website, talking to friends and moving through. And so what Sponsor Circle does is it really just kind of combines all of those efforts into one platform, so that you can say, find me brands, find me sponsors that are interested in youth in my area. And you can go on and you can see who those companies are and then who the contacts are. So you can have their contact details. So we have probably about 7,000 or 8,000 prospects or in there, and categorized based on area of interest. So it's a great place to start. And then also finding out who else they're sponsoring. So if they've sponsored, innovation, business and innovation conference, then, and you're a, business innovation conference, there's a good chance that, they'll also be interested. So it doesn't take away the responsibility and, need of good sponsorship specialists, but what we do is we help you do a lot of that front end. So that's kind of what we do.
Thanks, Mary Beth. Kyle, you have a question as well.
Yeah, I do. Thank you. Oh, sorry, I haven't talked in a while. You shared how important it is for businesses to embrace and shift towards the digital landscape during this time for their own sustainability. I'm wondering if either of you have examples of great sponsor integration that you've seen in virtual events during this time, and how important you think it might be for a festival, for instance, to embrace the digital landscape as well during this time for their own sustainability. Because I know a lot may be worried about shifting towards a virtual event, whether they'll get visitors or viewership as well. So I'm wondering if you have any ideas or experiences you'd like to share about that.
Mm-hmm. I think some of the best examples that I've seen have been one where there is already good quality content from prior years. So if you're a festival or event that has, some archives of, events, concerts, music concerts as part of the overall, street festival, then you have good content to be able to run it against. And the integration component is that, number one, right now at this juncture, brands don't want to be seen as deserting the existing partnerships that they have. And then secondly, being able to give them the data that they need. You're absolutely right, Kyle, that there is a challenge of converting a physical audience to a digital one. I think there's a lot of fatigue in that regard as well, and that's really where you have to be strategic about making sure that you, engage influencers to help you get that out there, and engage brands and asking them what they need at what point of the conversion.
I think another idea, another example, Kyle, if I could, is a partner that works with Skip the Dishes. Mary Beth mentioned them in relation to good food. That is such a ridiculously competitive marketplace right now of getting food into the household, whether that's grocery store or any other service, right? So they were looking for opportunities to get together with events that did have good databases, that had sizable opportunities to communicate one-to-one with the attendees. And the event didn't have to be an event now. It could have been from the summer, it could have been from last year. But their big part of them was that they wanted to do is to buy email communications. They wanted to be able to reach out to consumers and provide them with an offer. And they wanted to be able to pay for those opportunities on a performance basis. So people who take up that offer, they're a first-time consumer or user of Skip the Dishes, and they had to be in certain markets because Skip the Dishes is only in certain places, but they wanted to pay more for a converting customer than they would for just some sort of a brand awareness aspect of it. So that's an example of a digital asset that has to be far more honed in on the ability to have more one-to-one communication, and not just day of the event, but could be any time of the year. So it's almost like they were looking to try and network together a variety of email databases that they could communicate out with privacy and consent and all of those things taken into account.
Great, thank you.
That's great. That's great. I have a question for you. Do either of you see this virtual world and the live world becoming more of a hybrid in the future?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's so useful. You think about how we even consume, broadcast TV right now. I mean, we want it in bite-sized pieces, and I may not be interested in going out all 3 days for a festival or what have you, but I might be still interested in participating, and so I might do both. And you're certainly seeing that in a conference environment. So again, on if it's a B2B kind of a festival or event, you're definitely seeing that the hybrid component, and that in fact we're seeing a lot of kind of boxes of sampling products being sent to participants in advance of the festival. A really cool example is a company in Kitchener-Waterloo called Good Company, and what they are is in the real world they're pop-up concerts, and it's up and coming bands that are just pop up into cool warehouse areas all throughout the Kitchener-Waterloo. Now, the target audience in Kitchener-Waterloo is small, but they have a really great kind of target audience of young professionals, and they're purchasers, just like any other category. And what they're doing is they have these VIP boxes that they send out to, the first 100 registrants of these virtual pop-up concerts, and they make it a real like, shh, surprise, don't open it until the event, and like they really build up the excitement, and it is so well done, and they just have this crazy following of folks that are super excited, and they're not going to open that box. And when they do open that box on the night of the concert, now you've got this instant conversation happening on social going, oh my God, I got this, you know, and a lot of it is, you know, sampling products that they would typically have discovered at a local festival. And so that's, you can't beat that. And, you know, maybe I'm not going to want to go out to, you know, a physical, you know, music event, pop-up music event in the middle of the winter time, you know, but hey, if the virtual event is running alongside and I get that really cool box, wow, well, that's fun. And you're really creating social engagement right there. So.
Yeah, I think consumer behavior is going to dictate that it has to be this way for a while. If you just look at commercial real estate, and people's interest in whether or not they're going to go back to the office or not. There's going to be a hybrid of people going back to the office and other employees that are going to want to stay home, and companies are going to give that ability for them to make that choice. So, you know, commercial real estate means that a lot of companies are going to chop down their real estate that they need for people that are going to be there. The same thing you're going to be with events. So you're going to have a cross section of people probably for years that are going to want to prefer not to engage in large crowds and stay home, and but still want to engage one way or another. So it does, you know, maybe this is an opportunity to engage more people in general. So you probably had people before who didn't want to do that necessarily, and you can bring them into the fold now.
Yeah, and I could totally see that kind of an experience kind of moving beyond into, you know, museums, like a museum experience, right? You're creating an exciting, you know, webinar experience for education or learning, and you know, you're tying that into, you know, a virtual, along with, you know, sending out supplies or what have you to, you know, to all engage in this you know, this experience. Definitely seeing it move that way.
Anne wanted to know what the name of that company was that you mentioned. Was a good company?
Yeah, good company, yeah.
Okay, all right. So this brings something up for me. Many years ago, long before this whole hybrid thing happened, I remember reading something about, or hearing somebody talk about how they were trying to expand their wine business, and it was in the digital age, and where you could connect with people at home. So they would have wine tasting parties. The winery was in California, but the wine tasting was happening in Toronto. And at a specific time and day, the sommelier would come on with the home people, and they would go through each bottle of wine and do this whole thing. So that whole experiential, I mean, I think that's an opportunity for sponsors as well to engage in the industry and with the festivals and events. I'm just thinking like the Niagara Wine Festival, or even culinary tourism, that whole thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And if someone is thinking about doing that, please let me know. We've done a lot of work on this area, actually.
Have you?
Yeah, and essentially a lot of the sommeliers, some of the WSET programs. So there's all these like little wine clubs, but then also WSET, which is a designation for being able to serve and serve wine. A little bit more than just being able to serve wine, but and they're all doing all these. It's a huge component of that exam is tasting. And so what they're doing is they're being able to go out and they're delivering small mini-sized bottles together, and they're tasting together. So in the same way, they're opening up a bottle, they're experiencing it together. They may not physically be in the same space, but they're having that conversation about the experience of opening up a new bottle of wine. And this is huge down in California right now for the smaller wine clubs. That is what they're doing. They're bringing a sommelier on board. There's a lot of the wineries that have, or like the likes of an Arterra, which is our Canadian owner of, you know, Inniskellen and Jackson Triggs and what have you, and they're doing that now too. And and when you think about it, you're expanding beyond the winery experience, right?
Yes.
Only so many people can go to a winery, because that's awesome. But what can you do beyond for someone who will never physically be able to get to a winery for whatever reason? That's that magic that you're creating in a virtual experience that will never, you're creating something brand new for a brand new consumer to, you know, to experience a winery. Yeah.
Somebody has a question. Here's a question from Christine. Some of our sponsors would not participate this year because an outdoor festival that normally gets over 50,000 visitors, they felt would not get a ROI as with a large festival. How do you change their minds?
Yeah, I mean, that had been, you know, certainly a big issue, in particular if it was a consumer packaging goods company, that where, you know, where they really leaned on a festival and event for sampling. So perfect example, you know, again, going back to this Semaine Italienne, there was a particular wine that had been a sponsor for years, and they just didn't necessarily feel like they were going to get what they needed. And that's kind of where you need to kind of say, well, you've been with us for a while, you know, and you have to kind of look at the numbers and basically say, okay, well, what is realistic? What are they going to be able to do with that money in a digital advertising space, an influencer space, and then, you know, the sponsorship space? And you might have to, you know, look at your numbers, but I almost argue that a digital experience gets you better numbers than a drive-by. If you're sampling, if your numbers are only, I want 10,000 samples to have been consumed at the festival, well, that's fine, but who are they? Like, where did they go? Like, what did they look like? Brian does have experience in building, you know, an understanding of who that audience are, the traffic at the individual festival based on the cell phone data. But a virtual experience, it allows the brand to be able to speak to the audience throughout the year, and that means something.
Brian, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, it's, you know, my past in doing a lot of evaluations on events and things like that for clients would obviously be very different this year. And you know, Christine's question there is probably from a brand that is, you know, as probably a lot of brands who were in shock and had to make knee-jerk reactions, quick decisions, protect money, you know, all kinds of things could have been the rationale behind why they're not doing it. And ROI would definitely be one of those things. You got marketing people with personal objectives to meet. They've got their own bonuses. They've got their own salaries that they got to worry about in these situations. It really does mean that I think moving forward, everybody needs to be prepared with solutions that are going to meet reduction in face-to-face time. And it's going to be opportunities to build out that digital. And like Mary Beth says, there could be far better assets to bring to the table from a digital perspective than you know, than that walk-by engagement opportunity that, you know, a brand on a wall at a big event may not get seen, kind of a thing. So
yeah,
and actually, it just needs creativity. Creativity is going to be a key part of that.
Mm-hmm. And a perfect example, again, the Semaine Italienne, we just wrapped it up, so that's kind of top of mind, but they had a wine sponsor and they were kind of at risk to lose them. And what we were able to do is we were able to kind of craft a different digital offering for them. Number one, again, the reach, the influencers that they chose went deep into the Italian community. And if the wine brand was going to do it themselves, they would have to spend $1,200 at least per post, per influencer, to get an equivalent you know, reach. So they were able to go alongside the festival, not have to pay that additional money. It came in from, you know, in terms of sponsorship dollars. And then we were also able to demonstrate the media spend. So the kind of exposure, like a lot of the conversation was, well, should we even print posters for the community, even though we're not doing a physical event? And it was like, well, yes, absolutely, because we're going to get reach, you're going to see exposure, people are going to, you know, gain interest in the festival. And so, and then thirdly, we were able to kind of leverage some very specific interviews, and, you know, the wine brand was interested in getting deeper and more meaningful connections with the Italian community, and they, you know, and we were able to kind of convert their kind of core desire, which was sampling, into more like they saw these virtual assets as valuable, and so the difference in the sponsorship spend was quite minimal, but we were able to prove that we've got this following. So you had this following last year based on your sampling. Here's where you're going to get your sampling. Here's how we're going to integrate the influencers. We made sure that there was a brand lift through, you know, through the influencers as well as through all the media distribution for all the sponsors. Just tagging a sponsor in your posts is really important, and it's free. You can do it, and it means a lot to those brands.
So Mary Beth, maybe you can get a wine sponsor for the future FEO talks, because just imagine how much better this would have been if we all had wine.
Exactly. I think
See, everybody's nodding yes, even though it was 11 o'clock in the morning.
Hey, Brian, I have a question for you. I've never heard the term. What does KPI mean?
Oh, KPI is a key performance indicator. So it's a benchmark or a metric on which you're evaluating your success.
Okay.
So digital KPIs for ad campaigns can be the number of impressions that you deliver, or the number of clicks that you get in a campaign, or the number of conversions down the funnel that ultimately happen. So different advertisers have different types of KPIs.
Wonderful. All right. Well, that's it on my end. Does anybody else? That's it. I think we're good. I want to thank you both again for taking time to spend that with us and to share your knowledge. And yeah, it was really valuable. It was invaluable. So I thank you very much. And you put your phone numbers up earlier, and if you didn't get those, you can reach out to me. I can get Mary Beth's and Brian's information to you. And next week we have Rebecca Cotter and Dan DeRusso, who are going to be talking about the NEMP, the network municipal events guide that they produced, and are going to speak to it about getting festivals and events open again around the province within the municipalities. So I hope you'll join us for that. This is being recorded. We will probably post it. No, we will post it and get it out to you so that you can review it if you need it. Thank you again, Mary Beth and Brian. Really appreciate it. And we'll see you on the other side.
Right,
Thanks
pleasure.
everybody for
Thank
participating.
you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.